Welcome, dear gamers, to a scenario in which many of us find ourselves at one time or another. You're standing in a well-lit tavern on the countryside, and there is a din of conversation amongst the many races inside, in some tongues that you have never heard and others that you have only heard in your past lives. There's a dragon horde nearby, practically within walking distance. Bandits are attacking a nearby village for seemingly no reason, as there is no wealth. In addition, there is an arcane vortex forming towards the north. What are you going to do? What can you do? Who is going to help the town? You help yourself to some of your drink in one of the many corners of the tavern in which you may brood and contemplate the edginess of your existence. However, you come to realize that you're the only one at the table. There's nobody else there. And that means there can only be one initiative roll. So what do you do when you have to play a board game solo? Welcome, dear gamers, to the top 5 board games that are RPGs you can play solo. As always, please let me know what you all think in the comments below, because you know I love to hear all of it, and you guys know that this is the type of thing that's right up my alley, and so I'm super excited to get into it. I hope that you enjoy it, and we're going to dive right in with my number 5. At number 5, I've got the Big Daddy Gloom Haven. Now, this is a game that we all know is wonderful. Ever since it's come out, it's basically been on the tip of everybody's tongue. It's a wonderful RPG with some great character progression and storytelling and narrative coming out the wazoo. The problem that I have with it as a single-player RPG is that once you've played it, you've played it. Yes, there is some replayability, and of course you've got Jaws of the Lion and things of that nature, but the original game is a great RPG. It is a lot of fun, but because it's essentially a one-shot, then it can be very difficult to replay again, whether or not you have a group to play it with. But either way, being a good RPG with a wonderful story still makes the list at my number 5. At number 4, I have Too Many Bones, the game that is all about dice, 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 and a couple more dice. In this game, you progress your character by adding dice to a neoprene mat, and the mechanic therein I absolutely love. I think it's a wonderful way to track character progression and move yourself forward. You go into dungeons, you go through scenarios, and all of this sort of thing. The biggest issue that I have with this game, and it's a relatively minor gripe, is simply that it's more fun with more people. It's really designed to go in with a group so that you can have one person with one specialty and another person with another, and on and on and on. And it just makes it better in that sense. However, you can most certainly play by yourself and it's still a good time, but the biggest issue ends up being that it's a real pain in the butt to set up and tear down just for the sake of playing it solo. But that said, still a great game and a wonderful RPG. Too Many Bones, my number 4. At number 3, I've got Pathfinder, the adventure card game, in this case, The Rise of the Rune Lords, and I know that there's at least one more sort of section of this, but the idea behind this is that it is very much a card-driven version of Pathfinder, and you really can't beat going into a role-playing game without having a full-fledged role-playing game. Now, granted, I am a bigger D&D fan than I am a Pathfinder fan, but I feel that this implementation of role-playing in general just does a better job of both the narrative storytelling as well as maintaining a character throughout a campaign. The idea behind these being that you get additional decks that kind of continue the story from the beginning that you get in the base box. And it's still a great game, it's a lot of fun, but the only reason it's kind of middle of the road is simply because I like D&D more, so shh, don't tell anybody. But Pathfinder adventure card game, my number 3. At number 2, I have the sacrilege that is Mage Knight. Yes, I have put Mage Knight not at number 1 for something. This is still, I will say, an incredible game that does a wonderful job of showing character progression and deck building and exploration and everything that you expect from a typical role-playing game. The only major issue that it really has is it doesn't really have a story to it. Fundamentally, the story is you are a Mage Knight going around killing monsters, collecting loot, and you're trying to destroy the castle or castles, depending on what it is. So there isn't much of a story in that regard, but as far as strictly speaking, the role-playing game aspect, wherein you have a character, you get better as a character, you get more stuff, Mage Knight does it wonderfully well, and one of my favorite things about it to this day is still the versatility that the game has when it comes to adjusting the difficulty and all that sort of thing. I will say I still don't have Lost Legion, but everybody has said that it makes the game even better. So, highly recommend it. Mage Knight, my number 2. At number 1, I have Roleplayer, the literal embodiment of what this list is meant to be. You are trying to make the most valiant, courageous, and frankly well-dressed and wealthy hero that you possibly can. It uses mechanics very similar to things like D&D and Pathfinder, where you have a class, a race, and you're trying to get loot and all of this sort of thing and upgrade your status and get reputation and that whole thing. The best part is that you can play it solo though, and that's what I really love about it, because it's essentially a game that is about creating a character for a role-playing game. And I think it's just fun. I think it's a great concept. I think it's a wonderful idea. And honestly, a lot of what you do in Roleplayer can be transcribed into something like D&D or Pathfinder if you so desire. It works out really, really well. And it's just a fun game. Not only can you play it solo, but you can play it with a bunch of people. You go out on your own little quests or potentially together or whatever you want to do, however you want to play it. And that's one of the other good things about it, is that it's also very versatile. Again, not a huge story aspect, but the sheer RPG-ness that this game has is unparalleled completely, and that's why I absolutely love it, and why Roleplayer is my number 1. Well, fellow gamers, that's going to be it for me. I hope that you enjoyed these top 5 board game RPGs that you're able to play solo. Now, this is a super common theme for this genre where you're able to play it solo, and I think that comes from the idea of PC-based RPGs being soloable, or just solo experiences in general, and that being transcribed into a board game is kind of a no-brainer. But that said, obviously different games do it better or worse than others, and so of course I would love, as always, to hear what you have to say. So put anything and everything in the comments below, because you know I love to hear it all. And if you haven't done so already, please take a look at all of my various social media pages where you can interact with myself and my channel in a whole bunch of really cool ways. But that said, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Happy gaming, and I will see you next time.